I actually wear several hats, as you've noticed from the introduction. So in my capacity, first, as president of the Arizona Homeopathic and Integrative Medical Association, that is called AHIMA, I welcome you to Arizona. It's a pleasure seeing everyone. A lot of faces I've seen before, a lot of old friends, and I hope if this is your first time in Arizona that you're enjoying it. And I would only tell you that this is not my first time of addressing this fine group. The first time I actually attended one of the meetings of the Biological Dental Academy, it had a different name then, was back in 1991 in Monterey, California. Terry Lee took me there, and that's where I was introduced to Dietrich Klinghardt, who was there as a fill-in for someone from Vienna, Austria, and it was complicated, but it was that meeting that literally launched me into the world that I have traveled. For those of you that know who I am, I've worked for HEAL as an international lecturer for the last 15 years. I left them last May, and I currently now work for a new company. It's not a new company, but it's a new company for me, called Deseret Biologicals, which calls themselves DesBio, www.desbio.com. And Jake Carter, who's one of the owners of the company, is outside manning the booth that is set up here. And a lot of the things I'm going to talk to you about today should be exciting. I mean, we have something new, which is why I embarked on this new venture of helping to create a new line of remedies. And the original development and stimulus to develop it was stimulated by DesBio's relationship with Dr. Devi Nambutrapad, the founder of the NAET movement. And in studying NAET, which you may or may not know about, but I'm not going to talk about too much today, I'm not going to talk about too much at all, there was a need for something to boost the effectiveness of NAET, and that effectiveness is found in homeopathy. And that is my background. I am a homeopathic physician. I actively practice here in Phoenix, near Thunderbird and 7th Street, if you know the town. I've been here since 1971, did my residency and family practice at Good Samaritan Hospital. 1974, I went out into active practice, and I practiced as a board-certified family physician till 1988, when I actually got sick with pneumonia that no one can solve. Those of you that sat at the breakfast table this morning heard my story about how I was allergic to mold and was dying of a lung condition that no one could solve. And an hour after these little drops of diluted mold went under my tongue, I was healed. And that healing, I have told people, I felt it was the epiphany in my life. Someone upstairs was directing me to study what I studied, and here I stand today after taking oodles of courses. I've taken 50 to 60 weekend seminars, and I now teach. And the capstone of my HEAL career is I went all the way to Australia last October, and was very well received, and then kind of announced that I was now with DesBio. So DesBio is a company that's been in existence since the 1980s, and if you've never heard of them before, you may know them for the introduction of phenolics into the world. Phenolics are things that are incorporated into these remedies and are components of food. There are 38 different phenol-containing products that are part and parcel of foods in varying combinations. And the truth be known, they're also part and parcel of the nervous system. In other words, the cells, when you see what phenolics are and you see what foods have them, no wonder people with food allergies get the diseases that they get. And it was that building block that started this company off on its mission back in the late 1970s, early 1980s. And enter now the new finding that I bring to the table. I've always wondered when I saw the explanation, like you saw Dr. Yu had, it's my slide, I think it's Heal's slide that was up there, of the matrix with the artery on the bottom and the cells on the top and all the cross hatchings in the middle. I'm going to show you the same slide. It's a public domain slide. But I've always wondered where the homeopathic medicines really worked. It didn't make sense to me that the cytokines and the interleukins really just work there. Because we've got an autonomic nervous system in the body with sympathetic and parasympathetic. Oriental medical doctors follow yin and yang that alternate back and forth. In actual fact, there's scientific evidence out there right now that the true control of just about everything in the body comes from the brain. All of the autonomic functions control just about everything. Why not the immune system? So, in fact, by looking at it from that viewpoint and reading a lot of books that are currently on the market, it turns out that it's brain imbalances and neurotransmitter imbalances in the brain that actually are where it's at, and it's our belief, and that evidence isn't totally in yet that I can show you the double-blind study, that when you take the correct homeopathic dilution of something, that the action is in the autonomic centers in the brain, sending the signals down the pathways of the sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, and that's what controls the Th1 and the Th2 lymphocytes that drive the system. And in fact, if we got cut off right now, that's my lecture. I'm going to show you how that all fits together and how we fix the problem. Comprehensive homeopathy philosophy is based upon the fact that we're the first time in history that I know of combining 6 different modalities together in the remedies. And you'll understand that in just a few minutes. Magnified and concentrated by Burgi groups and desbiochords, which is something I need to explain to you. I'm then going, after I explain that, which is the scientific part of my lecture, the whole thing is scientific, but I'm going to show you these products that have been developed based upon this philosophy. And then, lo and behold, I'm talking to someone this morning at breakfast, gee, the only homeopathics I use is a thing called post-dental. I said, post-dental is produced by Deseret Biologicals. A Deseret Biologicals happens to have had for some time 4, 5 remedies that are specifically targeted for dentistry. Excuse me. So I'm going to show you the protocol of how our comprehensive homeopathic philosophy magnifies just about everything that it's used with. And today I'm going to show you how it magnifies dentistry procedures and how it really helps. The other night we talked about how it helps hormones. We're going to talk about fibromyalgia. We have a series of webinars that we do. And then at the end, if you're excited about this, you can tune us in on the internet twice a month and listen to the further lectures. Okay, well, here's the famous dental chart. I don't need to explain this to you. All the teeth sit on different acupuncture meridians. And in our philosophy, here's the way Dr. Rao drew the chart. In this philosophy, you actually need to find the patient's weakest meridian to choose part of the protocol's remedies. Because we've actually developed 7 balanced remedies that activate the weakest meridian. And it's important, as you'll see in a moment, to figure that out. And there are various ways to figure it out. Chiropractors can figure it out by feeling the patient's back and seeing which vertebral levels are locked up. You could do muscle testing with ART, Dr. Klinghart's method. Dentists can just look in the mouth and tell you what organ is worse by looking at the worst tooth. And sometimes it's more than one. And we'll talk about that in a moment. So the whole philosophy is that the brain controls the immune system, as I just told you. We've got a center in the brain that fires sympathetic signals. We've got a center in the brain that fires parasympathetic signals, and they go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. That is normal. It's when we get locked up in one side or the other as the main signaling source that people get sick. Now, just for a review, Sympathetic stimulation speeds you up. Parasympathetic stimulation slows you down. So your brain is constantly telling your body to go fast and slow. Those of you who know about heart rate variability testing know that when you do testing, you find out from the variableness of your heart rhythm that if you have a pulse of 80, that doesn't mean your heart is beating steadily 80 times a minute. It could be beating at 100 and then 60 and then 100 and then 60 and it averages to 80. Well, you could average to 80 by going 70 to 90, 75 to 85, 50 to 110, you'd live forever. 79 to 81, you're about to meet your grandparents up in the heavens. You are healthiest when the variableness is as wide as it could be and variable. So most people get sick when they get stuck in one side or the other, and the way that stuck affects the immune system is it either activates your Th1 lymphocytes or your Th2 lymphocytes and doesn't go back and forth the way it's supposed to, and that sets up the problems that occur in the matrix that we're going to talk about. So what we have is we have the sympathetic and parasympathetic nerves that are delivering the signal into this space called the matrix. Now you can see on the bottom of the slide you have a red tube and a blue tube. Well, the red tube's an artery and the blue tube's a vein, and up on the top of the picture are cells. And this space between the blood vessels where they end and the capillaries to the cells is the space known as the matrix. Now notice that there appears to be a flashing on and off in the matrix space. Well, if I just show you the next slide and then come back for a second. This is an electron microscope picture of a real matrix. And you notice on the right side you see these cross-hatchings. Those are proteoglycans. Under the control of the Th1 cytokines, they form, and under the control of the Th2 cytokines, they break. They're constantly forming and breaking. And as long as they're forming and breaking, life is good. If they stop forming and breaking, you get stuck in either a Th1 state or a Th2 state. Th1 states are chronic inflammation. Th2 states are chronic allergies. So let's go back here. So that's what's forming and breaking. Now what happens here is that the nutrients leave the arteries, the arterioles. Nutrients are dissolved oxygen, dissolved amino acids, dissolved fatty acids, dissolved proteins, fats, and carbs, sugars and starches, and work their way across that space. They eventually get to the basement membrane and need to cross it. Mucous membranes are the avenue through which everything passes. You'll see one of our remedies are homeopathic dilutions of a series of mucous membranes. The nutrients get into the cell, just like you heard this morning. They make their way to the mitochondria inside the cell. They all come together. If you have oxygen, you metabolize aerobically. You make 36 units of ATP, and the waste products are clean, carbon dioxide and water. And then the carbon dioxide and water comes back out, swims across the matrix, goes into the veins, and goes back out to the organs of elimination, which is the liver, the kidneys, the GI tract. And if all those pathways are open, life is good, you're healthy and normal. But if you get blockages anywhere along the way, like for instance, if you have heavy metal toxicity and you have mercury clogging up your mitochondria, then the body has a tendency to try and use up all of its resources, its oxygen specifically, to get rid of the mercury. And when your cornflakes come to the mitochondria get metabolized, there isn't any oxygen left, and you end up slipping into anaerobic metabolism, which only produces 4 units of ATP instead of 36. So 1/9 as effective to be in that condition. And the waste products are what I call the schmutz of the body. Alcohols, aldehydes, and esters, which clog everything up and make everything worse. So the secret is to keep the matrix clean and to make sure the body stays in aerobic metabolism. And from the standpoint of this conference, mercury toxicity is one of the worst offenders of the problem. And there are homeopathic medicines that fix just about everything, but if you don't get the schmutz out of the body, you're like driving against a gale force wind, and unfortunately, mercury sometimes sets up the perfect storm, as you know. So these are all the structures. That's the philosophy of how the matrix works. And I'm going to show you how it's been thought the immune system works. Now, the immune system lives within the matrix. And for years, it's been thought, this is something I learned in medical school, turned into a slide, and it's worth trying to understand this. That E on the side there that says allergen, that could be any type of offending particle. For the meantime, let's call it a germ. Let's call it chickenpox. And let's watch it happen again. A chickenpox comes into your body, and it's recognized by a macrophage as not supposed to be there, that it needs to do something to. So the macrophage kind of studies that chickenpox germ, and momentarily on the surface of the macrophage are little motifs of the chickenpox, which is then transmitted to one of two kinds of T lymphocytes. There's T helper lymphocytes and T suppressor lymphocytes. Well, in the case of germs, you want the signal to go to the T helper lymphocyte, which then transfers the message to the B lymphocytes, and the B lymphocytes are the cells that produce the antibodies. The most famous antibody is gamma globulin, or IgG, which then becomes a mirror image against the chickenpox, and it neutralizes the chickenpox, and you get over infections. Now, it normally takes about 14 to 21 days for that reaction to gear up. So during those 14 to 21 days, you have the chickenpox. And then as you start killing off your chickenpox, you get over it. For the rest of your life, this clone of lymphocytes will remember how to do this and will continue to make, or at least for a long time, will continue to make gamma globulin against chickenpox. And the next time one comes along, it eats up the first one before you get 10 gazillion of them, and you don't have to get the syndrome. Now, you know that they have learned how to mimic this system by making vaccines. Now, we're not going to talk about the efficacy of the autism that I believe comes from vaccines, but the fact is they do have vaccines, and vaccines do trigger this reaction to occur. Basically, what they do is they kind of stun gun a polio virus so that it can't duplicate. They put it in your body in the same immune shape as it was in the beginning. It just doesn't have the ability to double itself and to give you polio, but it does have the ability to trigger this reaction, and you end up making gamma globulin against polio, and then you're protected against polio. Now, the world that we live in, the allergen is not a germ. The immune system makes a mistake and decides that friendly self-type things are foreign invading particles. So what happens is, I'm going to go back. Hello. Do it over again. Now, that allergen is milk, or that allergen is your kidney, or that allergen is your thyroid. And you're not supposed to recognize milk and grass and your thyroid and your kidney as foreign invading particles, but in a defective immune system, it does. And you end up sending a signal through a macrophage to a T helper lymphocyte, to a B lymphocyte, and now you make different kinds of antibodies. Instead of making gamma globulin, IgG, you make IgE, you make IgA, you make all the other immune globulins, and those immune globulins park themselves on top of, in the case of allergies, mast cells. Mast cells are the cells that produce histamine. I'm going to get a slide that shows a histamine cell blowing up. And you end up releasing a lot of histamine, and that in itself becomes a disease. In the case of that, wouldn't it be nice if we had a way to stop it? Well, you'll notice I've been ignoring that cell on the bottom, the T suppressor lymphocyte. Well, God gave us a switch inside of our body to turn it off. If you could send the signal to the T suppressor lymphocytes turn off the B cells. This is how immune system works. Well, how do you make it go in either direction? Well, it so happens that very, very, very low concentrations of things and very, very high concentrations of things selectively drives the reaction to the T suppressor lymphocytes, and all the concentrations in between drive the reaction to the T helper lymphocytes. And it's kind of specified on this bell-shaped curve that we have here. And you can see that line moving. That line is moving because these border lines between what's low, mid-range, and high indicates that in the low range, if you're allergic to milk, for instance, let's take it on the high side first, you could drink 10 gallons of milk and drive the signal to the T suppressor lymphocyte, and your allergies would stop, your lupus would stop, your arthritis would stop. Matter of fact, that is an experiment that was done in New York in 1996 called the bystander reaction. But it's kind of hard to make someone drink 8 gallons of milk. So you could do the reaction on the other side and give them 1 drop of 10 to the minus 6th of milk. And the reason for the fact that those lines moved is that as you treat a patient, say, of course you're going to play the game on the low end, with say a 6x dilution of milk, which selectively will be this point right here, as the patient gets better, next week it moves and the borderline of the point is down here at what would be, say, 8x. So if you're giving a patient a 6x today and next week they need an 8x, but you give them a 6x, 6x is like giving them a glass of milk again, so you can make them sick. So as you're treating patients with homeopathic medicines, you need to progressively make the treatment more and more and more dilute. Well, the answer to that is the cord, by putting multiple potencies of the same substance in a remedy. We call it a desbio cord. The body will selectively pick the dilution it wants. The body has an innate intelligence. Or you could go out and get an EAV machine and figure out exactly which to give. You could do it either way. But for those people that don't have EAV machines, you need to give them all of them, and the body selectively picks it. So the desbio cord becomes something very important in being able to regulate the systems. Now, there's something else about the immune system. The immune system, what I just told you, was humoral immunity. That's how allergy shots kind of work. In the world we live in, where people get really, really sick, the T helper lymphocytes do something else. The T helper lymphocytes become, the T0 cells, the T helper lymphocytes, become the Th1 lymphocytes and the Th2 lymphocytes. And it does it alternately. In other words, that little T helper lymphocyte, 1 second is producing Th1 lymphocytes, and then is producing Th2 lymphocytes. And the Th1 lymphocytes produce these interleukins, or cytokines as they're called, and as long as you're making them back and forth, life is good and everything is going well inside the matrix, because those cytokines and interleukins control the matrix. But when you get stuck on one side or the other, and that's what disease is all about, getting stuck, you need to unstick them. Well, the theory is that the correct homeopathic remedy causes the T helper lymphocytes to become Th3 lymphocytes, producing the cytokine TGF-beta. TGF-beta breaks the logjam. Now, it has been thought that this all occurs in the matrix. In other words, you selected the correct homeopathic dilution of whatever was making the patient sick, and it produced that Th3 thing and made TGF-beta, and it unblocks the block. Our claim is this is occurring in the brain, and it's under the control of the autonomic nervous system. Now, how do I back this up without having ironclad proof at this moment? Well, there's been studies done and I'm going to read you a couple of them. This is a published article from Duke University that came out this past summer. This is the first time that a genetic approach has been used to demonstrate that specific neurons in the nervous system are capable of regulating the immune response in distant cells. They were talking about nervous system diseases. This was published in the Los Angeles Times, August 22nd, 2005, in reference to fibromyalgia. There was a time when it was thought to be psychosomatic, said Dr. Robert Bennett, a fibromyalgia expert at the Oregon Health and Science University in Portland. We now understand the pain in fibromyalgia is an abnormality in the central nervous system in which the pain sensations are amplified. The pain of fibromyalgia is not occurring because of some injury or inflammation of the muscles or joints. There's something wrong with the way the central nervous system is processing the pain from the peripheral tissues. It's over-amplifying the pain. The central sensitization model of fibromyalgia may even be used to help explain and treat other chronic pain conditions that have stumped doctors, such as irritable bowel syndrome, chronic low back pain, interstitial cystitis, vulvodynia. All may be variations of the central sensitization and the resulting imbalance of chemicals and hormones. Recent studies show multiple triggers for the amped-up response to pain. Fibromyalgia patients, for instance, have elevated levels of substance P, a neurotransmitter found in the spinal cord that's involved in communicating pain signals. Irritable bowel syndrome. I got two more of these study-type slides. The exact cause of irritable bowel syndrome is not known. However, health experts believe faulty communications between the brain and the intestinal tract causes the symptoms. A complex combination of elements, including psychological stress, hormones, the immune system, and chemicals called neurotransmitters, appear to interfere with messages between the brain and the bowel. This miscommunication causes abnormal muscle contractions or spasms, which is a Th1 type problem, which often causes cramping pain. The spasms may either speed the passage of stool, Th1, causing diarrhea, or slow it down, Th2, causing constipation or bloating. Anorexia. Neurotransmitters are chemicals found in the brain. Nerves use neurotransmitters to talk with each other. In a disease like anorexia, it's likely that the symptoms come from miscommunication between nerve cells. Migraine headache symptoms stem from a miscommunication between the cerebral neurons that regulate pain reception and those that control vascular dilatation and constriction. The new method of comprehensive homeopathy. Here's one of my personal heroes, the father of homeopathy, Dr. Samuel Hahnemann. Interesting story about him. When he was 80 years old, he remarried a 29-year-old woman who came to him for care and took him back to Paris, where she came from, and her parents set him up in practice, and for the next 9 years he became world famous. If it wasn't for the remarriage of Dr. Hahnemann and his move from Eastern Germany to Paris, we never would have heard of homeopathy. And I'm waiting for the movie, and I can't, in my own mind, I see Nicole Kidman playing the woman, and Jack Nicholson playing Samuel Hahnemann. Now, the comprehensive homeopathy is comprised of 6 types of homeopathic products. Plants, minerals, sarcodes, bowel nosodes, body chemicals, and phenolics. Now, I need to explain these to you. Plants, minerals, sarcodes, the Bach-Patterson bowel nosodes, body chemicals, and phenolics. Don't need to explain this. 70% of all homeopathics are plant-based. If you go read the Materia Medica, you can see all the different plant-based homeopathics that exist, and you'll see it in our formulas. There are also heavy metals. The worst poisons are the best homeopathics. Matter of fact, mercurius in its homeopathic form is one of the best antibiotics that's ever been invented. Arsenic in homeopathic dilution is a very commonly used remedy. Sulfur is a remedy. And the badness of the poison is reversed by the dilution. And I wish I had time to better explain homeopathy to you. If you don't already know it, it's something that's changed my life as a physician in being able to use it, and I can't get into how to teach you homeopathy right now. Now, the next four things are very important to know. Sarcodes are dilutions of healthy tissue. Now, let's say we wanted to give you arsenicum because you had a liver problem. Well, if we put arsenicum album under your tongue, it literally, the energy of it, homogenizes itself throughout your whole body almost instantaneously. But you really want it to treat a liver problem, okay? If you take a healthy dilution of liver, a sarcode of liver, along with it, the sarcode drives the remedy to the organ. In other words, if you want to treat cartilage and make cartilage regrow in an arthritis patient, you would use an arthritis formula like Detox, which is poison ivy. Homeopathic poison ivy helps arthritis. If you took it along with cartilage in a homeopathic dilution, it would drive the remedy towards your cartilage. So the use of sarcodes are very, very important in the products that you're going to see. My most favorite one is Funiculus umbilicus, the umbilical cord. Now, these all come from pigs. Suis is the closest animal to humans. What grows in umbilical cords and a lot? Stem cells. So, the religious people don't want you to use human stem cells, but they don't care about pig stem cells. And the pig stem cell stimulation, along with, say, cartilage stimulation, will help re-stimulate your own cartilage to grow if you take it along with a remedy that's good for cartilage. So the use of sarcodes are very important, and you'll see that within the remedies. Now, I'm sure you all heard of Dr. Edward Bach, of the famous Bach flower remedies. Now, you all know the story. That is a picture of Dr. Bach, and underneath it is the cottage where he lived in Wales, and I assume that that's Mrs. Bach, and over there on the left is his son. And the way the story went, it was a spring day, and he looked out the window, and he had this garden, and he saw all the flowers growing, and he got this brainstorm that the flowers had emotional treatment relations with patients. So he picked 38 different flowers, and he made sun tea out of them, and the sun tea, diluted homeopathically, would be treated to treat the patient based upon the flower to the personality. Like if a patient was a rosy person, he'd give him diluted rose water. If they were a shrinking violet, he would give them the violet drops. If they were a snapdragon type person, he gave them snapdragon drops. And he had 38 of these drops that are still in use today. There are some practitioners that are very good at using the Bach flower remedies. It's pronounced Bach because he's Welsh. Now, I'm not here to talk about the flower remedies, but 15 years later, a Dr. Patterson came along, knocked on his door. Most people don't know about Dr. Patterson. He came in the after wake of it. He said, Dr. Bach, great idea with the flowers, but I think that there are germs that live in the patient's intestinal tract. He probably knew Dr. Enderlein, I'm not sure. But he says, I think that these 8 germs are blocking the effect of homeopathic remedies. And the Bach-Patterson bowel nosodes are these. Those are them. Morgan Bach, Proteus Bach, Mutabilis Bach. And you'll notice by looking at the names of the homeopathic remedies underneath, they act as if you gave that remedy. So if you were to say give Mutabilis Bach, the third one, it's the same as if you gave the patient ferrum phos, kali sulf, or pulsatilla. Or, let's say you knew the patient needed pulsatilla. If you give him pulsatilla and Mutabilis Bach, it makes the pulsatilla work 10 times better. So the Bach-Patterson bowel nosodes are like super homeopathics. Plus, if you know what homeopathic you want, they act, I think it's in the handout. Didn't they copy that? Oh. Well, there it is. Okay. watch the webinar. You can somehow download it, but no, you can't download it. You better take pictures if you want it, or if you really want this and you can't see it, we will email or fax it to you. But the point of fact is, adding this to a remedy makes the homeopathics in the remedy work stronger and better. Now, Krebs cycle. Krebs cycle is how we metabolize aerobically. And I'm sure you've seen things similar to this before. I mean, the one remedy that comes to mind is like coenzyme compositum, if you've ever gotten familiar with it. Ours is not exactly like that. We've made it better. But the point of fact is that these ingredients keep the patient, if you make them in homeopathic dilution, in aerobic metabolism. And wait till you see how I've included this. Now, here are the famous phenolics. Look what they are. You've heard of these things. Acetaldehyde, acetylcholine chloride, apiol, ascorbic acid. Vitamin C is a phenolic. Caffeic acid, caffeine. Chlorogenic acid. Cholesterol is a phenolic. Cinnamic acid, coniferol alcohol, cortisol, DHEA, dopamine, epinephrine, estrogen, formaldehyde. All of these chemicals within the body are phenolics, and they happen to be part and parcel of foods, and 11 of them happen to be part and parcel of our nervous system. As I said, if you develop a food allergy, no wonder nervous tissue gets attacked, because you make antibodies against the phenolics and attack the different parts of your body where the phenolics happen to be. Well, the treatment is a dilution of the phenolic. Deseret Biologicals sells all these as individual products, but we have, wait till you see what we've done in just a second here. Now, I also invite you to go to the DesBio website, where they've created this interactive chart. That's www.desbio.com, where most of this is located. This chart will tell you which foods have which phenolics and which phenolics are in different foods. So in this particular case, you could see that wheat bran and tomato and cow milk have been called up, and you can see that they all contain coumarin. So if you have a patient that was allergic to these three things, you would treat them with homeopathic coumarin, or quercetin, or with rutin, or maybe with all three. But then the second part of the chart, it goes the other way. It shows which phenolics are in which foods. So, for instance, if you know the patient is allergic to coumarin, cinnamic acid, and chlorogenic acid, they're going to be allergic to apples. So you better either neutralize it or stay away from apples. 38 of these things in all foods. That's all there are in the food. So there's hundreds and hundreds of foods, but you can treat food allergies and the problems they cause by neutralizing these 38 compounds. These compounds were discovered in 1964 by a Dr. Robert Gardner at the University of Utah, and the DesBio companies in Salt Lake, and Dave Brown, who's the founder of DesBio, evidently knew Dr. Gardner and got the rights to sell it. So, 6 different kinds of things that we're going to include in homeopathic remedies to treat problems. Now, 11 of the phenolics of that list are integral to the brain and the nervous system. The ones in yellow are the ones that are in our first formula, which we call Cerebromax. But I actually helped pick these by reading the book The Edge Effect, by Dr. Braverman. I don't know how many of you have read that book, but Dr. Braverman, who's a protege of Dr. Robert Atkins, wrote a book about how certain deficiencies of neurotransmitters can cause different diseases, and he actually has a test in his book where you answer questions, and he can tell you whether you're a GABA person or a dopamine person, and then he sells vitamins and changes your diet. Well, we actually have come up with a way to regulate these within the body, and I'm begging and dying to meet Dr. Braverman because I think he's going to fall in love with this. But go read that book. I also met Dr. D'Adamo recently when he was here in Phoenix, and the phenolics that are in his food diets can be turned into super Eat Right for Your Food Diet phenolic drops, and I'm working on that. Now, this is what a desbiocord is. Now, a desbiocord is an ingredient that is in the remedy in 8 different dilutions. A 6X, a 12X, a 30X, a 200X, a 12C, a 30C, 60, and 200. The lowest dilutions, the 6Xs, stimulate things to be made more of in the body. The highest dilutions suppress. So a 6X will cause you to make more, but a 200C will cause you to make less. If, for instance, the neurotransmitters, the 6 of them that I included in our first formula, were in the formula as a desbiocord, which it is, it acts as a regulator because the body has this innate ability to choose the potency that it needs today. You don't have to choose it. The body chooses what it wants. That's one of the neatest things about homeopathy, is that it's a self-regulating phenomena. So in fact, if let's say you had too much GABA and not enough acetylcholine, and you give the patient all 8 of these dilutions of both of them, the one that's high will be made low, and the one that's low will be made high.
It's homotoxicology.
Actually, homotoxicology, which is the word of Dr. Reykjavik, this was discovered by Dr. Cahis. How many of you ever heard that name? Dr. Reykjavik copied it from him. Dr. Cahis, who I became very familiar with the literature, who was a very famous homeopath in Spain in 1911, published the article on what cords are. And Desbio has been using cords as long as Reykjavik was using them. No, they didn't. Reykjavik was in business longer. But the point of fact is the Desbio cord concept, which is very similar to the homotoxicology concept, which I am very familiar with, starts back with Dr. Cahis. Covered that base really carefully. And the next concept is Burgee groups. Now, how many of you remember that name? If you ever heard me lecture before, you've heard it. But Dr. Burgee is the discoverer of logarithms. Remember trigonometry in high school? Burgee is the guy who figured it out. This is where exponents come in. When you have, for instance, 4 ingredients at a 10x dilution, you got one of that, and one of that, and one of that, and one of that. You got 4 of them? You got 10 to the 4th of them. So if you have, say, Apis mellifica and Rustox and sulfur and pulsatilla, by having all 4 of them together as a 10x, it's as if you had 10, 100, 1,000, 10,000 times the amount of the pulsatilla than if you just had one of them rather than 4 of them. So by making Burgee group combinations of remedies within a formula, you actually act as a magnifier of if there was only one. So the people that believe in classical homeopathy of only using one formula at a time, actually Dr. Reykjavik proved that wrong way a long time ago, that you can add multiple remedies together. There must be at least 30 other companies that also produce it that way. So the utilization of these 6 stages formulated in Burgee groups and desbiocords supercharges the effect of each formula. So here's the principles now. The brain and the spine must be properly balanced or calibrated. If the brain and spine are not communicating properly, then no treatment modality will have full effect or may be completely ineffectual. And I got to tell you that this was actually proven by Dr. Devi Nambutrapad with NAET, who uses these formulas. The matrix must be functioning properly in order for the body to eliminate toxins. The matrix must be functioning properly by alternating back and forth, and the elimination organs and pathways must be balanced and functioning. So we got to balance the nervous system. We have to make sure the matrix is working, and we got to make sure the organs that throw the schmutz out of the body are open. In other words, I tell people, imagine that you just wash your dishes in the sink and you turn on the garbage disposal and the pipe is clogged, well, if that pipe is clogged, all the schmutz splashes back up and makes your dishes dirty again. Whereas if you open up the pipe, so you need homeopathic formulas to stimulate the liver to work properly, the kidneys to work properly, the lymphatics to work properly, and the GI tract to work properly. Formula number 1, Cerebromax. Notice the first 4, acetylcholine chloride, dopamine, GABA, octopamine, serotonin, and taurine, all there with the 8-part desbiochord formula. The following 5, cerebrum suis, cyclic AMP, diencephalon, pineal gland, thalamus, these are all parts of the brain, but notice they're there at an 8x dilution each. That's a Burgee group. So even though a part of the brain is there, by adding the other 4 8x's along with it, which actually support it, cyclic AMP is the precursor to ATP for energy. The diencephalon is a part of the brain where a lot of central connecting takes place. The pineal gland is said to be the major gland in the endocrine system, and the thalamus, which is where a lot of nerves come together as well. By putting all 5 of them together, plus balancing the neurotransmitters. Now, I got to tell you, I recently heard a lecture from Dr. Kellerman, who is the founder of Neurosciences Lab, and they actually do urine and saliva testing for neurotransmitters. And he made a really big deal about epinephrine and norepinephrine being important. Well, Desbio has those as well if you can test. So you need to learn how to test to see if the remedies are working properly. And you can add and subtract any of the phenolics you want. But this is the basic formula. I will tell you that this formula and this formula together is step A. It's a 6-part protocol. There's 6 bottles that are involved in the clearing protocol. And I invite you to go outside and get these brochures that they have out there, which explains the 6-part protocol and the protocols that I'm going to talk to you about dentistry, which I'll go over in the end. You do brain and spine for 2 weeks. If the brain is balanced and the spine and the nerve signals are balanced, that is the beginning of how to do detox. Notice some of the ingredients in here, and they're color-coded. Green, a yellow-green is a plant, yellow is a metal, blue is a body chemical like NAD and a vitamin. Here's the one that has cartilage suis, discus, intervertebralis suis, funiculus umbilicus for the stem cells, glandula suprarenalis, bone marrow. This is good for anyone dealing with any kind of bone problems. And then the last 4 are the Bach-Patterson bowel nosodes that support the individual homeopathics that are in here. These 2 are the basic 2 that everyone starts with. Now, leaky gut syndrome, as you know, allows for the inappropriate absorption of toxins. The worst cause of leaky gut syndrome is swallowing mercury. So you have to heal up the mucous membrane, so you have to worry about that being a problem. So this first formula, which I've been criticized for reading these ingredients one by one, Detox 1 is basically a liver formula. It's got all the homeopathics that's good for the liver. Carduus marianus, chelidonium, cinchona, lycopodium. If you go down towards the bottom, you could see the SAR codes of liver, hepat suis, colon suis, as a Burgee group, duodenum, gallbladder, intestine, lymph node, pancreas, thymus. These are all the homeopathics related to opening up your liver. If you're going to start detoxing the patient, you've got to make sure that their organs of elimination are open. So you'll see the detox protocol is the first 2, and then these second 4 starting in the 3rd week. And you just add it to a bottle of water so they're taking it all at the same time. I'll explain that. A Detox 2 is a kidney drainage formula. It's got the homeopathic Solidago, Baptisia, Berberis, Equisetum. It's got different anatomical parts of the urinary tract. It's got urinary bladder, the pylon of the kidney, the ureter, the urethra. It's even got Colibacillinum as the bowel nosode, which is the main germ that infects the urinary tract. And it's got the phenolic quercetin. I invite you to go look at the DesBio website. There's a chapter in the catalog explains what all the phenolics do, and I actually have a webinar coming up that explains what all the 38 phenolics can be used for, things like MS and arthritis and diabetes and heart disease. I mean, they are amazing remedies that are part and parcel of these formulas, but I'm just showing you the combinations that we put together. Detox 3 is for the immune system. This stimulates the immune system to work. I always like to talk about the SAR codes. People understand them more readily. A glandula suprarenalis, lymph gland, helps open up lymph drainage, hepar suis, hypothalamus, above the pituitary, the spleen, the umbilical cord, the tonsil. The tonsils, if you study with Dietrich Klinghardt, how many of you going next weekend to his seminar? And I'll be lecturing, you'll hear this again next weekend. But I only got a half hour. I don't know how I'm going to do this in a half hour. Tonsil suis is the main lymph gland of the intestinal tract. You know that the Peyer's patches in the intestines is almost like the second brain. Well, the tonsil is Peyer patch number 1. And if you stimulate the tonsils, and in neural therapy you actually inject the tonsils, but if you take tonsil homeopathically, you have stimulated every lymph node in the intestinal tract, known as the Peyer's patches. Medulla osseous is the bone marrow, triiodothyronine is the thyroid. All right, matrix support. This is the one that supports mucous membranes. Bile duct suis, colon suis, duodenum suis, esophagus suis, eye mucosa, gallbladder, ileum, intestine, jejunum, lung, nose, oral mucosa. Just about every mucous membrane we could get them to dissect out of the pig we had them dissect back in Iowa. You have no idea how hard it is to get an FDA-approved sterile pig. It took us about a month and a half. I mean, you can get a dead pig that's been dead for 6 weeks, but you're not allowed to sell that to the public. You've got to get a pig. We had to get a gynecologist to catch the pig, a pig gynecologist, veterinarian, to certify that this pig, it was an interesting project. I never thought it was that hard, but it was. So here's a picture of Cerebromax and Spinalmax. The way you do it, you do 3 to 10 drops of each 3 times a day, or 10 drops of each added to a liter of water throughout the day. I've been talking for an hour and I'm about to get to dentistry. Okay, and here's the other 4. At the end of the second week, you add these 4 to a bottle of water, and you do these Monday through Saturday, and then the brain and spine becomes Sunday. Brain and spine by itself for 2 weeks, then these 4 starting in the 3rd week, Monday through Saturday, and brain and spine becomes Sunday. I will tell you what we are being told. BrainMax itself is selling off the shelf unbelievably. It's a powerful brain stimulant. It makes you think clearer, and people are kind of slipping it when they don't really need it. But this is that protocol as well. Okay, so how do we connect this to biological dentistry? The optimization of biological dentistry. You do the appropriate brain and spine balance. You do the detox protocol. You have to open the weakest meridian. There are 7 formulas that I still haven't showed you based upon which is their worst tooth. If you're a dentist, you could figure it out very easily. You have your hand up? No, you're not. You then use the DesBio dental detox formulas, which I'm about to show you. And we also have a thing called series kits and Smart Silver. We have a silver product that DesBio represents that is very, very unique. I'll show it to you in a minute. This is the tooth chart, the Dr. Rao tooth chart. The meridian formulas. They strengthen the individual meridians to increase the success of future clearings, prepare the organ systems to receive the new allergen information through the meridians, and unblock the stuck meridians. So we have a bladder-kidney formula. If you got a problem with the front teeth that are related to bladder-kidney, you would add this to the detox protocol. If, in fact, the gallbladder-liver tooth is having a problem as the worst tooth, you add this formula to the detox protocol. If it's the heart and small intestine teeth that are having a problem, those are the balanced meridians, I will tell you that I have been using this formula here on blood pressure problems with people. I had a lady the other day that was having palpitations and high blood pressure. I put her on this overnight. Her blood pressure dropped from 180 over 100 to 120 over 80, and we're not allowed to say that. So this unblocks the meridian, the heart small intestine meridian. It's got core, which is homeopathic heart. It's got vein and artery, and it's got the phenolics that go with it. It literally unblocks that meridian. If you've got a tooth that's sitting on that meridian, that's a problem. Lung, large intestine, you add this to the formula if in fact it's the worst tooth or the worst meridian. Now the question has come up, what if you got more than one bad tooth? If you know how to muscle test, you could tell which one you needed, or both of them. I mean, there's nothing, the way we suggest taking these is that when I say take brain and spine, you put 10 drops of each in a liter of water, and that's what you drink all day long. You don't take the drops out of the bottle. And when you get to week number 3, where you're taking the 4 detox formulas, you put a dropper full of each one in a bottle of water in the morning, and you drink the water all day long. If you drink a second bottle, you doctor that one as well, and you add these weak meridian formulas to it, so it's a 5-part bottle. Pericardium, triple warmer meridian, stomach and spleen, and the governing vessel, conception vessel. These are the main acupuncture meridians that run up the front and down the back of the patient. Notice it's got nerve, cerebrum, psychotic code, disco Bach, ascorbic acid, ATP, lactic acid. Taurine is a very magical neurotransmitter, phenolic. Phenylalanine, Malvin, Apis mel, arsenicum, beritacarb, and belladonna. Belladonna is great when you got a hyperactive little kid who's carrying out with autism. I've heard Dietrich say that multiple times. These formulas have been around for the longest time. This is what was designed to give to the patient pre-dental. It's a homeopathic formula that in itself is not a comprehensive homeopathic product, but when you take it along with the comprehensive homeopathic products, you make it part of the formula. And this was designed to help the patient get ready for dental work. And if you know they're coming in for major work, you see we have a protocol for how to use it. This was the pre-dental visit, and this is for the post-dental visit. Now, those of you that look at that formula, this has been around for 20 years. What is that formula? It's what it is. But have you ever seen Traumeel with 4, 12, 30, and 200x? You don't. Have you ever seen Milfolium at 3x and 6x? And have you ever seen Roostox at 6, 12, and 30x? It's actually, my opinion, an improved form of Traumeel. And you'll notice what's there. It's got calendula and belladonna and carboveg, Bellus perennis, hypericum for nerve injury, hamamelis, heparsulf. Plus, it even has rescue remedy in it. The very last ingredient is not in Traumeel. Rescue remedy is the Bach flower remedy that is almost as miraculous as Traumeel is or was. In fact, I will tell you, I don't know if you've heard me talking this morning, my wife was injured 2 weeks ago on the beach on vacation. I go away every year for a vacation visit. She got hit in the head by a flying umbrella in a windstorm, and she's black and blue still. She had Traumeel in her purse, and thank God it was there. By the time they came to carry her off the beach, I had already given her 10 Traumeels, and I have a feeling it saved massive injury. It's a powerful remedy. I'm going to start carrying post-dental visit with me in my bag. But the point of fact is, this is good. This is great for injury, which is what a serious dental visit is. Look at this Oratox. Look at dental nosode. It's got Marcaine, dental gold, jaw osteitis, pilocarpine, molybdenum, palladium. I mean, a dentist put this together for Des Bio a couple of years ago. Lidocaine, autoacreate, phosphate cementopivacane, carboxylate cement, copper amalgam, non-gamma 2 amalgam, bacterial osteitis, acrylic polymer, silver amalgam, zinc oxidatum, composite material complex. It's also got natrium fluoridum, which is fluoride, calcarea muriatica, mercurius, here's your mercury detox, a lymph opening, thyroid, thymus, bone, fucus vesiculosis, colloidal iodine, colloidal selenium, colloidal vanadium, colloidal sodium. I don't know the name of the dentist that put this together, but you can tell that it's a very well thought out formula and is and was designed for dentistry. If you have a patient with gum disease, these are homeopathics that are tied to patients who have gum problems. Lachesis mutus, which is snake venom, hepar sulf, calendula, mercurius, arnica, plantago maj, phytolacca, carboveg, eugenia, caryophyllata, and mycoplasma salivarius. Mycoplasma is a germ that infects the mouth. So what do? Dental protocol, pre-visit. 48 hours prior to the visit, you begin the twice daily regimen of Cerebromax, Spinalmax, and pre-dental. By the way, these next slides we've taken the trouble to print out, and they're sitting on the counter, along with the chart if you don't have it. This protocol, which I'm reading now, is on a piece of paper. Jake is sitting there with 50 of them, and I guess he's got a Xerox machine for more. For the post-visit, for visits related to simple cleanings or fillings and other minor dental procedures, use the post-dental visit drops. For visits related to major procedures such as teeth extraction, cavitation repair, mercury fillings removal, and all the major dental surgical procedures, use Oratox. Post-visit, more. The day of the visit, you use the Cerebromax and the Spinalmax, and then you start the mixture of Detox 1, 2, and Matrix support. In other words, you don't have to wait 2 weeks to use it, assuming that you're not having it, the luxury of having 2 weeks. If you got a really sick patient, my recommendation is to start them on Detox before you do any major procedures. But if you just have the average patient, you do not have to wait a period of time. So you got Detox 1, 2, 3, and Matrix support, plus the week Meridian formula, plus post-dental visit and/or Oratox. You administer it by adding 20 drops of each formula to a liter of water and drink once every day until the mouth is completely healed, usually 2 to 4 weeks. Healing will be accelerated. Cerebromax, Spinalmax, and the 3 detox remedies all have long-term benefits because it's part of general detox and the well-being of the patient, so it isn't just for dentistry. But you use it up until the patient feels completely well. Maintenance is once a week or daily for 1 week a month. Now, Smart Silver, you've all heard the story of colloidal silver. I have been looking into this, and it's very confusing to me, and I don't consider myself a total expert on it, but I will tell you that this product is not a colloid, it's a sol. He sells corned beef down in the corner. But a sol, the particles are 10 to the minus 9th, as opposed to a colloid where the particles are 10 to the minus 7th. And that actually creates an effect that I'll show you on the next slide, but improves antibiotic action, internal and external disinfectant, destroys bacteria, virus, and mold. It's safe to use. And I know that there's 4 booths out there selling silver products. Our main product is homeopathics, and someday someone's going to put together a colloidal silver panel, and we're going to duke it out. And I'm not going to be the expert to duke it out. But these products are produced at 10,000 volts, which it was designed to create a solution that resonates at 910 terahertz, which is the same as germicidal ultraviolet light. That's why this one is better than the other ones. Unique in that bacteria do not mutate or become resistant. The mechanism of action is the silver oxide removes an electron. It has a resonance at the blue germicidal light frequency and the magnetic viral DNA disruption. You have to drink about 1,000 bottles of these a year to turn blue. No one uses that much. Now, the last thing I'm going to show you, which I don't think is demonstrated outside, is DesBio has recreated the Kupfer boxes, where they've created these little series kits. And if you're concerned about Lyme disease or any of the other chronic infections, They're cereal dilutions that take a month to take. There's 10 vials in each box. I got to tell you, I had one daughter who went to Bali with a friend and went to the park where the monkeys were, and she came back having played with monkeys with hepatitis A. 8 days of this product, colloidal silver, high-dose vitamin C IVs, and alpha-lipoic acid IVs. She was well in 8 days. Her enzymes went from like 900 to normal in 8 days. Blew my mind that this could help do that. Thank God. So the Des Bio products are only available through healthcare practitioners. This actually is part of the webinar that we use. Jake Carter is sitting outside. You can also get a hold of me at drshelton@desbio.com. It comes right to my email directly here in Phoenix where I practice, or to my BlackBerry. Those of you that know me know that I respond to email extremely quickly and enjoy doing so. And as promised, I finished in an hour and 15 minutes. So that leaves 15 minutes for questions. And I know I covered a lot of material, and I hope you enjoyed it.